immunotherapy in stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer, evidence and experience so far. What I try to do is to take the immunotherapy role in overall in stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer and see what is the evidence for today's use. Next slide, please. Click again. Yeah. So this gives a bit about hint what is the percentage of these stage 1, 2, 3, 4 cancer in our clinical practice. This is one of the reference, and if we take data from many other centers, it appears that stage 1, 2, and 3 may make more than 30% of those cancers. And if we take around stage 3, that will be around 15% of those total cancers in lung, where we have a tough time deciding the treatment. And if you club the stage 3B, then the number becomes big. And then we see that almost one or maybe more of those cancers get into those stage 3 in lung. And then we have all kind of varied treatment in this situation. And then we'll try to see that if we take these together, stage C and B, how immuno-oncology fits into it. Next slide. Now, overall in non-small cell lung cancer, we do require multidisciplinary approach, but I'm sure everyone will agree this is far more truthful in stage 3 lung cancer. And we do require from pulmonologists to ensuring that patient is in good shape, that we are able to give treatment to the patient, because the patients do come with lots of morbidity. Then we need radiologists to have the proper staging, the pathologist, the surgeon, that is oncosurgeon or cardiothoracic oncosurgeon, the medical oncologist, and the primary care physician in this setting. Sure, we can add many more people to this list. Coming to standard of care for resectable non-small cell lung cancer, and what we see that if you have a resectable non-small cell lung cancer, if they are resectable, either we go ahead with surgery and then we give some adjuvant treatment, or another approach is neoadjuvant treatment, either neoadjuvant chemotherapy or chemoradiation, and then do surgery for these patients. But I do concede that this will vary from different stages. But if it takes stage 3, yes, this is a fair approach in this setting, and this is far more truthful for end-to disease, where by and large neoadjuvant therapy is given and then followed by surgery. Otherwise, we prefer surgery and then followed by adjuvant treatment. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the indications for neoadjuvant therapy in stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer. Next slide. Next slide, please. So, these are some of the situations where we use neoadjuvant systemic therapy, that is anti-disease at presentation. Tumors not amenable for upfront chemoradiation in view of high volume disease. Tumors that are borderline candidate for upfront resection, we want some time so that they build up their lung. Otherwise, resectable tumors that were deemed inoperable upfront due to poor lung function, and we require some optimization in the meantime for the patient before we take it for surgery. These are certain situations where we use this therapy. Next slide. What suggests that yes, as we use those adjuvant and neoadjuvant therapy, this suggests that there is a good scope for developing those therapy in this setting, because already we are using the systemic therapy in this setting, and apart from that, we can improve the outcome of these patients. And this also allows, because whenever we do surgery, we do have some time for the patient to be taken up for surgery. It allows window of opportunity trial in many settings. This was one of the studies. This included all stage 1 and 3 patients, but that gives us some hint. At this situation, the patient received the nivolumab, that is 2 doses. Remember, that will be within 4 weeks window period where you do surgery, and it suggested that almost half of the patients demonstrated major pathological responses in these patients, suggesting that it looks like as far as the downstage in the patient is concerned, this drug has got some activity. Now, Do they have effect on improving PFS and OS? At this moment, we are not aware of, but these are good enough that people are working on it to develop this concept. Next slide. Showing the other studies, there are in fact now 8 of the studies has been published. They are a smaller one, and I'm showing you many of the studies which is ongoing, which will define these immunotherapy in neoadjuvant setting to see that it is feasible or not, it is safe or not, and does it add in improvement of outcome of these patients or not. Next slide. And these trials highlight again, showing again in a many number of trials that there is a keen interest in people to develop neoadjuvant immunotherapy in patients for lung cancer, and which stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer is also included. Next slide. These are again showing you some more trials saying that yes, there is a lot of interest in developing this treatment. Next slide. Now, has there been an interest in adjuvant immunotherapy? We do know that in adjuvant setting, in stage 1B, 2, and 3, we do use adjuvant chemotherapy. And we do know that in these patients with the best of the treatment, the long-term survival remains around 50% odd, meaning there is a huge scope for improvement for these patients. And yes, we do have some trial going on where there is people have an interest to improve outcome, because we do understand since late 1990s or early 2000s, there hasn't been a real good development in adjuvant setting, except for maybe one drug, which I'm sure we'll talk about it, which improves outcomes beyond the cisplatin-based chemotherapy. After that, we are stuck with it, and there has not been much development to improve outcomes. It appears that yes, people have interest in using immunotherapy, and this is one of the studies which is a famous one, Arrow's trial, where after giving the standard treatment, people are trying to see if we add immunotherapy to them, do they improve outcome in this situation or not. Next slide. And these trials also include stage 3 lung cancer. Not only one drug, as I showed you, neoadjuvant setting. In this setting also there are other drugs. Previous trial was for nivolumab, and here is another trial which is for pembrolizumab in again stage 1, 2, and 3 patients. Where stage 3 patients are included to see that giving adjuvant immunotherapy will improve outcome or not. We do know that it does improve in melanoma, and people are interested in a tough to treat tumor like lung cancer. Does it add to the outcome? Next slide. Showing that interest of many people in this setting, and these are those phase 3 trials suggesting that yes, there is a keen interest in adjuvant setting for immunotherapy. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now coming to this was for stage 3 tumor resectable, and for the role for immunotherapy in neoadjuvant setting and adjuvant setting, where looks like there is something promising. Looks like we are looking keenly for the outcome of these patients. Coming to the unresectable non-small cell lung cancer, and we are starting with the induction chemotherapy. Induction prior to chemoradiation therapy has been tried in many situations to see that does it improve outcome or not. And what we can conclude for that induction chemotherapy patient is fit for chemoradiation, then it doesn't add improvement in outcome for these patients. Next slide. And this is the induction chemotherapy trial for unresectable non-small cell lung cancer patient, and what we can see here that it looks similar outcome. Next slide. Suggesting that if patient is fit for chemoradiation, you need to go ahead with the chemoradiation. It adds to toxicity. It doesn't add to the improvement in outcome. But we do use it, as I suggested earlier, in many settings, and we do use in our patient at TMS. If the patient is initially not fit for chemoradiation and you require downstage of the tumor, then yes, you can downstage significant number of patients. In our population, it was almost almost 2/3 of the patients we were able to give chemoradiation subsequently. Now coming to what way we can give chemoradiation. That chemoradiation, it can be either sequential or it can be concurrent. Both ways, if the patient is unfit for concurrent chemoradiation, then one can think about giving sequential chemoradiation in these patients. When we give chemotherapy, and followed by radiotherapy rather than chemotherapy. What are the chemotherapy regimen used? There are many of them. What is best tolerated chemotherapy? As many people you will ask, you will get as many answers. But what we know that yes, combination chemotherapy is a rule, but apart from that, there is also data for single agent chemotherapy with carboplatinum that also can be used in these patients. I'm sure we will have a discussion in subsequent what people prefer in the practice and what are the issues we should remember, especially in the context of when we are using immunotherapy in these patients. Next slide. Survival remains, as much we say the chemoradiation in lung cancer is a curative treatment, but we need to remember with the best of the treatment, the median survival of these patients remains around 25 months apart, and if you take slightly older trial, the median survival goes around 17 months, 18 months, or 20 months odd. And we just had a presentation before my presentation, which suggests that in palliative setting, you are able to give some nice tablets, then the median survival of these patients goes around 40 months and 50 months, suggesting that there is a bit of oxymoron here when we say curative treatment being given, but the median survival being around 20 months odd, and also suggesting that yes, we need to improve outcome for these patients. People have tried it. They added more chemotherapy to it. It didn't work. They have added more radiation to it. It didn't work. People also added targeted therapy to it, but again, it didn't work. So I'm sure for last almost 3 to 4 decades, we have been waiting for is there any treatment which can improve that an outcome for these non-small cell lung cancer unresectable patients where we can improve outcome by adding a radiation. Now, this is a trial for conservation chemotherapy in this setting, and what we can see that again it has a limited benefit. Next slide, please. Next slide. So, obviously, we always had this question that can some drug we can have where one can see in a randomized trial to improve outcome, and that is where this drug durvalumab comes in, which was tried in this setting. And we do know why people were initially trying to see that if we add immunotherapy in this setting, it will improve outcome. Because what has been seen that there's overexpression of PD-L1 on the tumor cells, it inactivates the T cell and the tumor grows. And this happens especially when you have exposed the patients to the radiotherapy. And that led to that if we give this immunotherapy in this setting, most likely it will be more effective in these patients. Next slide. This is the regulatory status for this drug, and we know that in India and almost all the regulatory authorities which I am aware of, they have approved this drug in this setting in the patients receiving chemoradiation for stage 3 lung cancer, where this drug can be given after the patient has completed chemoradiation. Same is true for Indian regulatory, and it is true that one can give this drug in this setting. Next slide, please. Now, people have this is a trial, and what we see that finally we had a situation where we had this drug which improved outcome for these patients. Initially, the data was of progression-free survival, and I'm sure we all know it. And just re-emphasizing these kind of curves we don't see so often in general oncology. Definitely, we don't see so commonly in lung cancer, where at 18 months you do have almost more than 20% improvement in absolute improvement in progression-free survival for patients receiving one form of treatment. And here it was post-chemoradiation patient receiving durvalumab versus patient receiving placebo in this setting in the patients of stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer who were unsusceptible. Next slide, please. I'm sure we all want the most important endpoint, which is not easy. Most of the tumor, most of the mortality, it is not easy to get one. But here, yes, this drug got the improvement in overall survival, which we always think that's a benchmark. But again, I repeat, most of the treatment, we are not able to achieve it. And at 3 years, the improvement in survival, that is absolute improvement in survival was 13%. Again, unusual in overall oncology, and definitely unusual in lung cancer, with hazard ratio of 0.69, which is again significant, which by any standard is important statistically and also important clinically. Next slide, please. Coming to role of induction chemotherapy in unresectable patients planned for CTRT, and this keeps cropping up because again we have a immunotherapy, a good one, and we want to know that if we give induction chemotherapy in this setting, can we give immunotherapy or not? Yes, in Pacific trial, almost 26% of the patients they did receive induction chemotherapy. So if you're giving induction chemotherapy followed by RT, then yes, these patients can be included to give immunotherapy in this setting. Next slide. Does the chemotherapy very much affect development of pneumonitis with CTRT? Yes, we do have a data. I'm sure we will have this discussion where it was suggested that you do have certain chemotherapy like taxane-based chemotherapy where the chances of having pneumonitis may be higher. And that becomes important, and that's why I did mention in the previous slide that choosing the chemotherapy regimen for chemoradiation will become more important as we go by. We will have to have more data on it to see how we are able to deliver the immunotherapy in these patients in case if they develop pneumonitis. Next slide. Next slide. So another question, related here. Another question is, when do we start durvalumab? And we do understand that durvalumab was allowed to be started immediately after chemoradiation in the Pacific study, but majority of the time we are not able to. And the question always comes when we can start the patients at durvalumab in the practice. And here there was retrospective data which suggested that almost 60% of the patients they started durvalumab 14 to 42 days, and less than 14 days only few patients were able to take this treatment. Next slide. And what it suggested that whenever we start treatment, that is within 42 days, it doesn't appear that there is a differential impact on the outcome. It's a different matter. That in specific study suggested that earlier you start is better, so we can go on debating about it. But what it suggests that if you are able to start treatment within around 1.5 months, it's good to give this treatment. Next slide.
Kumar sir, you have to wind up, please.
Wind up 10 seconds. Okay. Speed testing is must know. Next slide. Delay the occurrence of brain mets? Looks like yes. Next slide. So we also see this is the major treatment development which we all use in the clinical practice, and which should be which adds life to the patient. Apart from that, pembrolizumab also has got approval in the same setting, and what we keep debating should be using durvalumab or pembrolizumab, and that can be part of the final discussion. And I leave the presentation here. Thank you, Sachin. Thank you for this opportunity.